Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the quality webinar. My name is Lori Brannon with the Illinois Department on Aging. Just to let you know that all attendees are going to be in listen-only mode. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the question area on your page. A copy of this webinar is also available as a handout that you can download from this page right now. If you have any questions, again, make sure you type them into the chat room. At any time you do would like to ask a direct question, keep in mind that our presenters will pause and allow for questions whenever they are able. I'm going to turn this over now to Mike Burkus.
Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Burkus with the Department on Aging. I'd like to welcome you back for what is now the second quality webinar in what I hope to become a long series of quality webinars. The webinar today is specific to preventing falls, environmental safeguards, and resources to support your risk mitigation efforts. As we go through this, I think what you'll learn is that we have gleaned a lot of information from the critical event reporting application. And so in response to the webinar done by Dr. Michael Korenkowski, those of us here at the department only thought it made sense to take it a little bit of a step further and talk about environmental safeguards and some additional resources that are readily available to you. So I am accompanied here by Jody Martin, who is also a part of the Department on Aging and will be a co-presenter today. So I'm kind of gonna jump in and start and then turn it over to Jody, and then I'll pop back in toward the end of the presentation. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope that this is beneficial to all of you. Okay, so I think it's always really important to have some context behind what we're talking about. As we talked about the study tool briefly with Dr. Korenkowski, we went right back to the CDC's site and started to pore over and peruse the resources they had available. And so this slide just had a couple statistics that really stuck out to us. And the one there regards to hip fractures, more than 95% are caused by older adults. So the population that we serve, the population that we care for, and I think it's really important to realize that when you read it on the slide, yes, hip fractures are common, they happen to older adults, but that's really just the beginning of the story. You know, somebody falls and breaks their hip, and it really starts this long episode of costly utilization. The other statistic there on the screen is each year, 3 million older adults are treated for a fall injury. If you were to, you know, I like to kind of provide some context to myself, and if you were to take the 3 million and divide it by 365 days in a year, we have thousands and thousands of people falling every day. So I think this helps put it in perspective. And as we move to the next slide here, what we've got in front of you is some statistics from the Critical Event Reporting Initiative. I want to draw your attention to the date range there, kind of in the title, 7/12/17 to 3/26/19. So this is, just one second here. It looks like we have some individuals that cannot see.
It should be visible now to all attendees, correct? Yes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, moving right along. Small glitch there, thanks, Lori. So again, some context from our system. And I want to make a point that this comes from ECCPIS when we first started out of the gate, and brings us all the way up to just a few days ago when we ran the data. So this combines data from both systems. If you look at the count of event reports there, 4,692 falls with injury, 6,100 without, for a grand total of 10,875 falls. That's a large number as I see it. And then as we have discussed, you know, in different arenas, maybe it's the CPAC group, maybe maybe you've been a part of the OASAC meetings, but I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom table there. Falls with emergency department visits, roughly 16% of those falls have been tied to an emergency department visit. So when I speak to, you know, it just be the beginning of the story, you fall, and then really your journey just starts. Okay, so When you consider all the reasons why somebody would go to the ED or have an unexpected hospitalization, if you were to round up and just make this clean and say that roughly 20% is attributed to a fall, I think that is absolutely something we should pay attention to, and I kind of view that as something that's occurring that's highly prevalent. I think that there are 1,000,001 different reasons why somebody could find themselves at the emergency department or in the hospital. So falls, we understand through our system and through the literature, are really driving a lot of the costly utilization, not only in our state, but nationwide. Okay, so moving along to the next slide here. It's kind of busy, but I think that the numbers are very important. It helps justify why we are here this morning. Basically what we have here on the left-hand side in the grid, the number of falls, okay, just counts. And then over on the right in the grid, we've got percentages based on those count totals. So what you see here that is very interesting, and I think it's meaningful, is that the vast majority, an overwhelming majority, almost 90% of the falls in the community care program are happening at home. Okay, the unknown down there towards the bottom, I think, is really important, because I would say that roughly 4% of the falls are the difficult ones. As to say, this isn't about a rug, it's not about slipping in the bathroom. We could have cognition issues, we could have medication issues, those things that aren't readily visible to us when we are serving our participants. So I put this slide in here. I think it's really important to realize that maybe our participants aren't getting out as much as we hope. There could be a laundry list of reasons why. Sometimes as you age into your 80s or 90s, home is your comfort space, and that is fine. But I think the second piece of this is that if we know that roughly 90% of the falls are happening in the home, we should have a webinar about environmental safeguards, right? So I think it's a good place for us to focus because we know that so many of falls are occurring in the individual's residence. Okay, I'm going to switch the slide here, and then I'm going to turn it on to Jody. She's going to kind of get into the weeds and talk about some more detail in response to what we have seen in the critical event reporting application. So switch the slide here, and Jody, go ahead.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Jody Martin. I have been in aging for 2 decades, so I feel really old when I say that. I don't know how often I will. But we're going to go over the falls and some things to prevent the falls, risk mitigation, preventing stuff from happening, making changes that make sense. It's kind of my fun stuff that I like to see. And I think a lot of you are probably already doing a lot of things, but even if you only learn 1 or 2 things today, that could be enough to change somebody so that they're staying at home longer, have an easier time, maybe getting in and out of the shower or something. Every little bit helps. So what we have here on this slide are the critical incident reports that you entered. Okay, so these numbers do come for you. So we have the trips, slips, and stumbles, right? They say they tripped over their own feet, there's stuff left on the floor, cords, laundry, the grandkid that's there with their sleeping bag, pets. And basically each of these could also have an I don't know what happened, right? Because we don't always know why we fell down. We've all done it before. In the movies, when they fall down while they're putting the jeans on, they fall down, it's funny. But when you get to a person who's 80 years old, it's no longer funny, right? So a lot of losing their balance, not using the assistive devices they already have, the cane, the walker. A lot of times when they're in the home, they don't think they have to use it because they have things to grab onto, but we also know that in the home is where most of the falls happen. And then the other one I thought was interesting was that they're hurrying to answer the door. That's that last one. And most of the time you reported it was for the home care aide or a family member that was coming. So I had quite a few home care aides where they knocked on the door and the person fell just trying to get to the door quickly. So again, probably not using their assistive device correctly. Okay. So we have a lot of the causes that you did put into the CIRs. Okay. The one I want to use today basically as the main example is they slipped in the bathroom because there was water on the floor. Okay, so we have the incident. They had a slip, fall. What was it caused by? Water on the floor. But we really need to go one step further now, right? What triggered the fall? What was the root cause that made that happen? So we're going to look at today's learning objectives is that we're going to review some resources that we can assess, measure, respond to, prevent falls, recognize the tools we can use, learn where these mitigation efforts can be effective in the home, probably, the different areas, the rooms, so we also know where to look, and recognize how the participant can contribute to the mitigation efforts. Okay, what can they do themselves to make it easier on themselves to prevent falls? Some of this will seem like common sense, some will be a few surprises, so let's go through and see what we have. Okay, so some problem-solving tools within the toolbox. First off, we're all from CCP, so that's what we're looking at here. You have the CCP comprehensive assessment. You see all the domains there. We actually, pretty much have what it says, a comprehensive assessment. We go through a lot of domains, and while we didn't have all the fall risk mitigation stuff while we were designing it years ago, and that was the AAA, CCUs, and the providers with the department helped develop that. And now that we're looking at all the risk mitigation stuff, we find out, you know what, we already get most of that information. But while we're assessing it, which is the first step, we are using the comprehensive assessment to ask questions, to get some facts, to get a lot of self-reporting of what's going on with that person. There's also home assessments out there conducted by contractors. That weatherization program, when they go through, are looking for things that, not just to help with the utility bills, but things within the home. If there's broken things, if the roof is leaking, causing additional problems in the home. Occupational therapists also do home assessments, and that's dealing with how the person can function within their own home. For the most part, we're starting out, the care coordinators are starting out by doing this assessment, getting a lot of information. And the providers, as usual, the eyes and ears, they're in the home the most, serving that participant, seeing what things are changing, what's happening with that participant throughout the day. And also, these are good areas to discuss with the participants and their family about environmental changes that are needed. A lot of times the family doesn't realize that something could help. And they're like, oh, well, I would have helped with that if I known. Well, having an assessment, having something there that, yes, we did that, here's what we're showing, is a very easy way. So it's not just a, I told you so. It's in this method, in this assessment, this is what we found. So I went through and, looked at the comprehensive and found those areas that had the information we're looking at for the risk mitigation. Okay, so we have the self-reported falls. Under the physical domain, we also have the incontinence, some cognitive impairment. The vision impairment is usually pretty self-reported. Okay. Behavioral with the MMSE and the DON, right? We see a lot of that cognitive impairment. If we have some depression, there's also the heart, circulation, blood pressure problems, which we also see in the other areas, in the physical as well. So a lot of these we hit in a couple different areas because it does affect a couple different things. The getting in and out of the shower for bathing, we find that score. Medications, that's a big one. We know by the number of medications. Is this polypharmacy? Do they have more than 5? Are they forgetting to take their meds? Of course, a lot of that's self-reported unless there's like a family member or somebody there to maybe say something or shake their head one way or the other at the same time the participant's answering. Medication that can cause the hypertension. So if they get up too fast, do they get dizzy? Do they have that's a good time for a fall if your blood pressure goes down when you stand up, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later. The eyesight, again, self-reported here, but Let you know if they have difficulties. A lot of the older houses don't have the wiring for a lot of lights, so there might be some insufficient lighting that was fine when they were younger, but now that maybe the eyes are a little cloudy or more trees have grown around, the house is a lot darker. So those are the kind of things that we already glean. We already glean that information from the comprehensive. We already have it. Now, what are we going to do with that? Okay, so one of the things, and I do believe we're going to try to have this for our quality webinar next month, is to go through the STEADY toolkit. STEADY, as you can see there, stopping elderly accidents, deaths, and injuries. Excellent resource to go through. A lot of handouts for the participants, but a lot of information for us as well. So we're not going to walk through that assessment today, but we will discuss a little bit of it and some other resources. But very good. I think it's pretty much being used throughout the industry for simple tests to check mobility, balance. Very good functional tests there, and for the most part, very simple. So that's a nice thing. The easiest place to find it, I think, is that Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. And I do have the website address there. It's also back there on the resource page, so you'll see that again later. Yeah, so we are not looking at these directly today, but I wanted to let you know. There is the 30-second chair stand to test the leg strength and endurance. There's tug. That's where they're assessing the mobility. The 4-stage balance test. That's 2 pages, and the measuring of the orthostatic blood pressure. Most of us will not be attempting that one because we're non-medical, although I think the ADSs can do it because they can take blood pressure. A lot of our participants already have their own cuffs in the home, doing as part of the home health doctor checks that, keep their eye on their blood pressure, heart, things like that. So, but again, we're hoping to have somebody next month who will literally, he has done it many times, so literally can walk through and say what he's seen, hasn't seen, how this works, how simple of a tool it is, and yet very effective. I'm not turning this, so I wasn't sure. Okay, complex medication regimen. This is where we look at how many medications they take. Now, if they have 5 or more, that's pretty much telling us that polypharmacy is defined by taking 5 medications or more. It increases the person's fall risk. Okay, ironically, there's also different medications depending on what you're taking them for. They can cause sleepiness, confusion, difficulty in making decisions. You can have negative reactions to certain ones. Actually, we heard this last month. Dr. Kornikowski, was talking about it. He had a list of them. I'm not sure if it was sad or funny that I went through and had quite a few circles on those medication lists that I'm taking. So definitely pointed out that I'm a high fall risk just by the types of medication and the numbers of them that I'm taking. So we also have the other thing to look out for is that some of those things can be pills that were prescribed to deal with the side effects of the first pills. So we're dealing with the condition, but then sometimes there's a side effect that then we also add another medication for. And then I don't know what to tell you if there's an additional side effect there. Hopefully they are talking with their doctors to let them know that because they can change medications that may not have the same reactions. But oftentimes, especially with the age group we're dealing with, they won't say anything. Doctor knows best, but the doctors can only know what they're being told. So if the participant never tells them they're having a problem with this, they will never change it because they haven't found out. They're going to assume everything is fine. Okay, so these are things that during the medication assessment, again, we hit that in our comprehensive assessment. It's important to figure out how complicated is this and should there be some extra attention on it. One of the other things that we're dealing with the fall is impaired vision. There'll be such thing, you know, the eye lenses yellowing, the cataracts, using those bifocals in the glasses, some damage caused by diabetes and other eye diseases. It not only doesn't give you clear vision, but it makes your own home a little dangerous. If you have those stairs just going in and out of the house, within the home, up to the bedroom, downstairs, when you first get those bifocals, you're looking through the wrong lens when you're looking down, unless you've entirely move your head entirely down to get the clearer. It's much better just to take them off to walk downstairs. Even walking up the stairs, misjudging that step because you're looking through the wrong lens is a big thing, makes the trip really easy. So vision problems definitely a part of this, and a lot of our seniors do not go for annual, biannual checks with their eye doctor. They don't usually go unless there's a major problem. However, minor problems can cause falls as well. So having regular trips to the eye doctor, it is important so they can get that right, correct strip going. Strip. Why did I say strip? Prescription. I don't know. Do they have a shorthand for that? So updated lens prescriptions and checking for different problems they may have. Again, I mentioned about the lighting in the house. So a lot of these older houses do not have they weren't set up for as many electronics as we use nowadays, right? Now we have the DVDs, the big television, we have this hooked up, that hooked up. Laptops, there's computers in the other room, all the rooms have fans, lights. Well, if you don't have enough electrical outlets in your home for all that, you're starting to take away from things. And sometimes lighting is one of those things. There's not enough. As you age, you need a little bit more. These LED lights are very nice in that you'll get more light, but you're not using as much energy. So that worry of the electric bill shooting up is taken away there. Natural sunlight, of course, is always awesome. It's free, and it just makes the home feel better. But, you know, depending on how close the neighbors are and such, and we do have different things to even deal with that now, and that you can open the blinds from the top, let them down, let sunshine in, but still keep the neighbors and their curious eyes out. And of course, those night lights. We never think they're bright enough, but you know, in the middle of the night, and you're trying to go to sleep, some of them just actually all of a sudden they're too bright. So, but night lights, you know, you put them on for the kids when they were little, but it works for everybody. In fact, they're even doing on the modern bathrooms have that extra lighting that's underneath the sink. They even have that night light that goes on the toilet. My nephew just thinks that's hilarious. It's motion activated when you walk in, and you can choose color. So he likes to change it to green or blue. But basically, for those of us that don't want that bright light in our face when we wake up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, they're very good alternatives. Gives you a path. We've even seen people using that rope light to get a clear path to the restroom. So you don't have to guess, you don't have to remember, because you're usually still half asleep and want to stay that way so you can fall right back asleep, right? But lighting, again, to help with those visual issues, you improve that, you'll decrease the falls. Okay, one of the things we don't put a lot of emphasis on in this country, I think, in just thinking about things in a common sense, general manner, is with our feet. For some reason, we can understand the vision, we can understand the rugs and all that for causing falls, but we forget about the foundation. Okay, what are we standing on? What's holding us up? Can that be an issue? Of course. If we don't have the right support, stability, the shoes that hold our feet in place, the wrong size shoes, the one that has soles that stick out an extra inch or two. So if it's too long, you're going to trip. If the shoe does not have the right support, it's going to start pushing on the wrong areas. And of course, we have those that rub here, rub there. Those don't help either. So professional assessment, whether it's by a physician, podiatrist, other foot specialists, go for it. A lot of people don't ever check those, but if you're having some problems with not feeling everything in your feet or feeling pain here and there, and so that does affect how you walk, when you get up in the morning, when you get out of a chair, there might be extra pain as opposed to when you've been walking on them for a while. So those are things that we do need to have checked. Of course, we do like our improper footwear, and we're going to see a lot of them. Those house shoes up at the top. I wonder how many of those you've seen as you walked into the home, right? They're at home, hey, it's my house, and they're walking around in those flip-floppy house shoes that don't do anything but keep the dirt off their feet, which I know is one of the goals, but maybe it keeps their toes warm. But to go up and down stairs with those, it's kind of scary because they can slip, ironically, slippers, right? But they can slip off your feet. It always scares me when people are going up and down the stairs in those, because I have seen the house shoes fly off and they're like, oh, grab the hand railing. Glad they have it. So we see a lot of them, I'm pretty sure. Then we have those feet going into the high heels, which if you're not used to those high heels, it could be difficult to walk on, but it's whether or not do you fit in them. Do you have swelling? If your feet swell during the day, then shoes like that are going to be very uncomfortable and affect how you walk around. The bottom left there, of course, another example of those house shoes. And whether tennis shoes or anything, the shoes that you have on, if it has areas that cause a lot of pain, then they're not the right shoes, and it affects how you walk. So when you look at the good shoes, see that good footwear is not just for athletes. It needs to be for us too, and we don't always remember that. But you need to have that good support, the cushioning, the stability, that motion control. Fit is important. Okay. As we go on, we're going to say, well, how do we send them to all these people, or should we? Yes, the answer is yes. Okay, there's going to be a lot of referrals. When we're finding things that are wrong, that may be causing a problem, that they hadn't thought about, and we say, well, there is a professional to check this. There is somebody that can check it to see if we have any problems, to see if you need some assistance with whether it's your eyes, your feet, whatever there are, those professionals. So through this study, part of the toolkit is also this fall prevention patient referral. A lot of you have made your own. It's not a mandated thing that we're using, but CCP does have a referral sheet. But this is just an example of one. And guess what? Most of the information, again, we're already getting through the comprehensive. So the healthcare professionals we're talking about, the doctors, the physician assistants, those physical and occupational therapists, pharmacists, of course, doing the medication check, nurses, there are more. This is the basic list, maybe the top ones that we see. Optometrists, I put that, I don't see optometrist is one. I have to put that one on the list. Okay, so we're finding out what's going wrong. We're making referrals. Okay, going to the second one, recognizing the tools and important considerations which can assist with problem solving. The usual assistive devices that I know we've already been working with, right? You have the canes, walkers, those scooters, wheelchairs, the infamous ramps, which come from multiple resources, whether it's weatherization or other funding. Those we're kind of getting used to, right? Everybody sees them now. Everybody knows what they are. Usually like the first, second steps of getting things into the home. You can say it, family, everybody knows what they are. We have those assistive devices for the bathroom, the bedroom, those grab bars can go in any room of the house. We just think of them the most in the bathroom, around the shower, bathtub, even around the commode. We have the benches there to get in and out of the bathtub, the raised toilet seats. But I really like that bar on the side of the bed there, that extra support. So those are things that are usually kind of the second step of seeing what needs done in the house. Okay, those lever doorknobs, those are really good, so you don't have to, what am I trying to say, clench?
Dexterity.
The dexterity of using that doorknob, yeah. So the level one, which, you know, is one of those things that has come into fashion anyway, so it's very acceptable to have those for all the doors of the house. But that's the reason. A lot of things that start out as assistive devices work their way into general construction, because so many people of older ages, you know, are the ones that are commissioning having the houses built. So lever doorknobs, common thing now, lots to choose from. So assistive devices do work their way into our lives. Some of the usual home modifications, of course I was going to go there, right? Home modifications, they have the widening of those doorways. You have an older house, they can have some pretty narrow 28-inch doors. They were cheaper at the time. Usually I remember moving into an older house, and I think my husband widened them all to 36-inch doors. And then we found out it was a good thing we put the shower in before all the doors and that, because we couldn't have done it once we fixed the doors. It had to go through the garage door to get in, and realized later we'll never get this thing out of here. So you also have those wide throw or swing clear hinges where the door is pulled out, can go all the way back against the wall, gives everybody access to get in the restroom. It pulls out, so if somebody falls in the inside of the bathroom, and some of the restrooms are so small that you can't open the door if the person's on the floor, right? So even if the EMTs are there, they may not be able to get into you to assist. So those other hinges add a lot of flexibility, add a lot of room to, again, have access. I was thinking about the other day, and when I ran across these again, I'm thinking, one of my restrooms is pretty small. I might need to change and put those other hinges on so that, you know, the family, no matter what your age, there is access to get in there. Okay. Other bathroom updates, you know, replacing the bathtubs with showers. Some of these might be a little expensive, but if the change is needed, sometimes, you know, do you want to spend $1,000 or not be able to live at home? That's the difference. Okay. If they're older showers or bathtub that's in there, you know, often we're replacing those rotten floorboards, or the ones with missing tiles, and they have rugs and the trip hazards there. We have those motion sensor faucets. Don't even need the paddle handles anymore, because when your hands get near, it'll turn on. They even have them for the commode now, but you know, not the ones that go off every 5 minutes while you're there. Those are a pain. They don't save any water. But they have the one where, you know, you run your hand over it. It's on the back of the commode on the tank, and it just flushes when you do that. There's nothing that you're touching, pushing, pulling. It's just a flash of your hand. So that's pretty cool. A lot of these houses, you have a senior living in the home. There's that old design, you know, of the bathroom in the middle, bedroom on each side. And quite often that bathroom is pretty small, isn't it? So if you're trying to move around in there, I'm not even talking with a walker or with a wheelchair, they can still be very small. So if they're the ones living there, one thing to do is take one of those bedrooms, use that same wall for all the plumbing, and put that washer dryer from the basement in there, put that roll-in shower, make it a room that can work for the senior, okay, that they can use, they can stay at home. Again, is there going to be costs associated? Yes. But quite often you'll find that family members and friends and other funding resources can help with that. We're not trying to just have expensive things to fix the home. We're just trying to make changes to the home to help them stay in their home. Okay? Third thing, learn where those mitigation efforts can be effective in the home. What can we do? Where in the house can we make those changes to help prevent falls? Okay. One of the things is in the bathroom. That was my example from earlier, was water on the floor. So we put the cause in. We entered that into Sarah, right? But what is behind it? What makes that happen? What is the root cause that we're looking for? So here we have 3 examples. Okay, this first one, there was a leak from the toilet tank. We see that a lot, right? Makes the floor wet and slippery in sections, and so they had a fall. But what caused it? What caused it? What happened? Here we're finding a leak, okay, a leak from the toilet tank. So obviously we want to repair it. And if you've had that leak, if they've had it for a long time, make sure you check that floor. Make sure it's not soft around the toilet, or even the entire bathroom floor if it's been there long enough. We do not want anybody falling through to the basement or crawl space because the floor gave way. It can only happen, handle all that extra water for so long, and eventually something's going to give. It is very common when redoing houses, especially of any age. It's almost automatic that the bathroom floor has to be replaced, because when you have a lot of water, you usually have some leaks and it causes damage. So reason number 1, what else could have happened? Condensation drips from the toilet tank when the bathroom's hot. I know you've had to see this. I know they make some where they try to prevent that, but it is really hard. It's very cold water coming in from the underground, so it's cold. The room is hot for one reason or another. In the summer, we see it the most. However, we know we've been into some of those homes where the heat is turned on almost throughout the year, so it's very warm in there. Okay, so we might have to use towels, obviously the easiest one. Some of those moisture absorbers that they have for basements and such, just to absorb it so it goes into that instead of into the floor. Okay, look also to make sure none of those the heaters, the vents are blowing directly on the commode, because if you have the heat going directly on it, I'm sure that the older adult wants to stay warm, but maybe direct it towards their feet or something, not just towards the tank. Sometimes they don't think about that. We got the heat in there, okay. But then it starts doing all that condensation and making a trip hazard. So, and number 3, one more, towels on the opposite side of the room. How many have to turn around to dry their hands, or they get out of the shower and they have to reach across to the towel rod? Very simple thing, but it happens. You got those drips, and where you have a drip, you could have a fall. So easy solutions: the non-slip rug, catch the drips, dries itself pretty good. Or you can even add or relocate the towel rack closer to the tub, shower, or the sink. Simple solutions, simple cause, but if no one picks up on it and no one fixes it, again, it can cause falls. When we move into the bedroom, there's a place where a lot of falls happen. They have to make some pretty large adjustments, right? Especially if they had a spouse at any time. How you sleep in the bedroom, how it's arranged, things like that. There's life events, there death, sickness, divorce, health changes that maybe a loved one or even our participant has to sleep in the chair now, has a special hospital bed in another room. And the bedroom is usually their safe place, right? It's where they have their memories, everything. It's usually where they keep their home safe, their jewelry, their wedding albums and that. All that emotionally and financially stuff, they usually keep in the bedrooms close to them. And also, we have to be careful of those emotional ties, those memories of the loved one, the spouse, when it comes to changing furniture in the bedroom. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The simple one of falling out of the bed can still be a lot of causes. Edges of the mattress no longer firm. That's a big one, especially, as the mattress ages. A lot of times that constant sitting on the side of the bed wears that out, and so it gives way. Now, if the person's leaning in bed, leaning to turn on and off that light, and that's giving way, that can cause them for the whole body just to simply roll out of bed. That's one reason for a fall. If the bed is too high, feet should touch the floor when sitting on the side of the bed. That's is supposed to be common knowledge, but I can tell you now, I've never had a bed where my feet actually reach the floor. If you're short, that may not be happening. But that is the best way to, prevent some falls. So if they need to, if you have a wooden bed and you can take some height off of that bed so feet can touch the floor, it's easier getting in and out, then that's not something we usually do, but it could really help this participant. Changing the bed size. Buying a new mattress because they need one, or in a smaller bed to make more room for mom. Maybe with the wheelchair and the walker, they need a little more room. And when you first wake up, like I said, you're only half awake when you get out of bed, especially in the middle of the night. You may be relying more on memory than on the current reality. So if you remember getting out of a certain bed as in one spot, and you have to walk around it instead of being on the side next to the restroom, that's a lot of change of directions, going around stuff. Each of those change in directions is a possibility of a fall. It adds to that possibility of a fall. It can make a big difference between rolling out of bed, falling out of bed, getting out of bed safely. And sometimes if you're asleep and you're going from a king-size bed to a twin, that simple rollover for the last 40 years that they've done becomes a rollover and off the bed. So this bed railing, as you see in the picture, it's not just for people that, always fall out of the bed. It acts as you roll over and you feel that. It's a good reminder that, hey, I'm in that small bed now, so roll over a different way or readjust. It goes down, so it's not like it's up all the time. It doesn't trap them in the bed, but it can, even when they're half asleep, remind them, hey, you're in this bed. We have to wake up a little more, think a little more so that we don't fall out of the bed. A change in the side of bed they now have to sleep on. That's a big one. I think most of us have a side of the bed that we're used to. If you're married, have a partner, once you pick the side of the bed that you're on, you guys are comfortable with that. That's kind of where you are for years and years. And so if you lose that spouse, if you lose that spouse, that space is still there, you're probably not going to start getting on the other side of the bed just because it's closer to the restroom. You're going to be sleeping on the side that you're used to. Okay, so some of those choices of, and understandably, when they move the bed, go to the smaller bed, more room for mom or dad to move around in the room, that could be correct. However, keep in mind those emotions are still at play. So if it feels like you're cutting out a loved one because you're cutting out their spot where they slept for 40 years, next to them for all those years, okay, that will be an emotional jolt to them. Not everybody feels that way, but just keep in mind that those emotions, those memories can make a difference. If they have saved that spot for the last 10 years, maybe even talk to their loved one then, or think about them then. Just eliminating that, don't do it without warning. Let them be part of that decision making. Otherwise, again, that depression can come back. That part of that loss may be there again. So even with just moving furniture around in the bedroom, you got to watch out for those emotions, those memories. It makes a difference. Mom or dad or that participant, had a long life. They've done a lot in their life, and that's coming right in, right along with them to the age they're at now. Okay, other causes for falls, as we know, we have the weakness. What can cause that? Dehydration is a big one, those UTIs, fevers. Dehydration, UTIs were behind so many of them in the SARAs that on your entries. I was amazed how often it was. But obviously those two, the dehydration probably caused the UTIs as well. So dehydration was huge. And again, it causes so many side effects. There's UTIs, falls, dizziness. Okay, so have to remind everybody sometimes that if they're able to, if the doctor says they can keep those fluids in, okay, some people are on restrictions, but if they're not, you need to keep drinking those fluids. And actually that counts for all of us, okay? But we're seeing so much of it as you report it. So we know it's out there, it's an issue. We'll have to probably work on it sometime to increase that fluid intake for our seniors. Middle of the night trips, we talked about them. We have that need of the restroom. Kind of all knew about that. We have thirst. That's why a lot of people have that glass of water sitting on the side table. Pain is a big one, especially if they come back from a surgery or they have chronic pain. It will wake you up in the middle of the night, and either they get up and take something, they may be up for a couple hours and then go back to bed. But pain is a very real issue. I think there's a lot of people, and we talk, jokingly about how seniors may get up at 4 in the morning. Was that just from their job in the past and they carried it forward? Or is it because they're no longer comfortable laying in bed? They hurt, they're in pain, they have to get up. Maybe they switch to that chair for a while to try to sleep there, but pain, thirst, and need for the restroom, big causes for those middle of the night trips, pun intended, because that's when a lot of those falls happen. Okay, items left on the floor, clothes, rugs, shoes, any of those things, if it's there, if you're going to step in that area, walk in that area, it needs to be clear. Not enough light to see clearly. I talked a little bit about that already. Maybe you don't have enough lamps. There's not light coming through that window anymore. And their eyes may not be as great as they were before. So we need that little more light to see by. And then there's the blood pressure changes, okay? The quick drop in blood pressure when they get up from a sleeping position, sitting position. That's a biggie for what happens. And a lot of us hear that, right? I got dizzy, I don't know why, I just kind of got woozy, the room started spinning, I didn't feel good. And a lot of that is that orthostatic blood pressure. Okay, so keep an eye on that. A lot of times they can do some things to prevent that. I think we hit that in a few minutes. Let's move to the kitchen. Okay, so we know they could be reaching up from the top shelf, reaching down to pick something up. They can get dizzy or not quite have the balance because they're not in the same position as they usually are. Not using their assistive device. Yeah, they may not be hanging on to anything. They may not be using their walker. So maybe using both hands to try to carry something or to reach up or to pick that heavy pan up that's in the bottom cabinet. That poor balance or lightheadedness can happen, the poor lights so they can't see what they're doing. Each of those are things in the kitchen that could cause a fall. But why did it happen? Okay, what was that core reason behind it? Loss of balance when reaching up to the top shelf. That's what we see in Sarah, right? But what's behind that? What can we look at for the root cause? Excuse me. First of all, that change in position may cause that change in blood pressure and their balance. Neck back when they're looking up is not a usual position that your head is in. It can cause a restriction in those back arteries in the back of your neck. And so you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I look up at something and then I start getting dizzy. I've got to sit down. Well, good that they recognize that. But that does happen a lot when, again, that's not a usual position for your head to be in. We don't want to cut off any blood flow. So that is a reason why we want to move things from up high. Head below the waist, again, they're reaching down for something, another change of the blood flow. The reaching up, they may get on a stool, on their tippy toes, again, change in the center of balance. Even, maybe sending some mixed messages to your brain on how to deal with that. Some solutions for these, we have those grab bars, right, those reachers. If they're strong enough they don't have severe arthritis in their hand, then those are a good alternative. Of course, there are super cheap ones and there are nice ones. And hopefully something in between is manageable, but very good for especially those food items like the thing of salt or that you're getting from a higher cabinet. Pull down cabinets, I thought that was pretty neat, that picture on the right, where they actually have the device in there that literally the entire inside of the cabinet goes down to the countertop height. I actually haven't seen one in person. I think it looks pretty cool. I don't know how expensive it is, but I think that would be very useful if you're a person that doesn't like everything on the counters, to be able to use it easily. To get the stuff you use the most every day, you see there, it's the glasses and plates. To get that down to your level, you can easily reach it. That's pretty cool. Another big thing, and in the fashion now too, is those pull-out drawers you see there in the middle. That they're not as far down as the low cabinets, but they're no longer, over the person's head. So a lot, putting those in that first deep pull-out drawer, again, it fits fashion now. They they're following some of those assistive devices and making them popular, making them stylish. So, we should be sure to use some of those. They finally caught on, so now we should too. Those motion sensor water faucets, you do see a lot of them in the kitchens now because you have food and everything on your hands. You don't want to have to contaminate all those handles, so those come in handy. And those counter level cabinets, not just the ones that pull down, but others that you have that you can put the drawers, or it goes from floor to ceiling, that you can just open it up and everything's right there. So some examples that we can use. Those dish drainers. If you're there alone or with your husband and you basically use the same 8 dishes every day, then just having it in the dish drainer, wash, dry, you pick it up again, use it. Small cycle, you don't have to get everything out of the cabinets each time. If that makes it easier for you, use it. Some of those dividers there, you see those pans, okay? You have a bunch of pans, they're in a small area. They don't have to go in that bottom cabinet all stacked up, falling out when you open the door. That can sit right on the counter, easy reach. Baker's rack, if you do not have enough counter space, again, a lot of easy reach areas there. Kitchen cabinets, making some of those, if you have an island, make it that waist level or the comfortable height for that person. Basically, set it up for them. What works the best for that person, for their setup of the kitchen? I love those baker's racks because there's, different kinds, different heights, and again, can find what works for this particular person. Yes, Kathy, you're right. Hurrying to get to the bathroom causes a lot of falls, just like hurrying to answer that door that we talked about. And again, what's that? That's getting things out of the way, making sure the floor is not slippery where they're walking. It also needs to make sure that that chair is the right height. If their bottom is sitting below their knee level, they're going to have problems getting out of that chair, aren't they? So you either have to move the chair, make it higher, buy a higher chair, something that getting out of the chair is not so much effort that they're never going to make it to the bathroom because they're applying pressure on everything just to get out of the chair. That's a biggie that we often don't address. For those of you who know me, I talk about that for years. Yeah, they do have those plastic lifters now, but they also can be homemade with, a 6x6 cut in there, a little hole to hold everything. You don't feel like you're going to be sliding all over. So you're right, Kathy, though. That hurry to the bathroom is another reason for calls. But there's so many things from start to finish that we can change. It's definitely worth looking into. Reason number 2, they're not using their assistive device. Talked a little bit about that. Trying to transfer something to the table or into the next room. It doesn't matter how impaired you are. You're still going to try to do some of the things that in your marriage was traditionally your role, or that you have a roommate and you're in charge of cooking or such. And so they're going to try to transfer that food. So whether it's on the walker, we've seen those, the basket or the tray, or if we decide to use or get something in the home that, maybe we only use for tea, coffee, to hold the toaster or something. But now we're able to use it to carry things back and forth between rooms. That they're not trying to carry and use a cane or walker at the same time. So we can be a little bit creative in what we use to get these things done. Okay, so now we're going to move on to recognizing how the participant can contribute to their own mitigation efforts. Mike?
All righty, and I am back for the next couple slides. So I think Jody presented a lot of things that are very helpful, and I think that there are things that, as a network, I am confident that we think about these things, Monday through Friday, and even during the weekends when we're serving our participants. But I think it's important to realize that if you learned a couple new action items or a couple things worth investigating or learning more about, then really I think this webinar has served its purpose. I think that it's very unrealistic for us to expect everyone in the network to know everything. So I think sharing of these resources and information is only a benefit to us. So it brings us to the most difficult place, I think, which is what's here on this slide. And we have lots of strong ideas. We've identified the fall risk. We even believe we've identified the root cause, or what is driving the repetitive falls. But now you have to encourage behavioral changes, right? And that is the really, really tricky piece. I think some of you on the line probably know that my background is in social work, specifically mental health social work. So I am very familiar with the difficulties that come along with serving that client that is just resistant to change. I should say participant versus client, but we know that some of those individuals we serve are just resistant. That's my routine. That's what I know. That's what I'm comfortable doing. And so the first bullet here speaks to what I just kind of covered. And the more difficult the case, the more difficult the individual, oftentimes it's the family that's difficult, right? Maybe it's the POA over healthcare, whatever it may be. But if we recall our webinar with Dr. Korenkowski, he said that a multifactorial approach is really the gold standard. Okay, so if you have somebody that's struggling with medications and somebody that has some difficulty with their gait, maybe after a hip replacement, and then we have a congested bedroom or a bathroom or a leaky toilet, whatever it may be, you have to address these things multifactorially. Okay, so one intervention or one risk mitigation strategy may not knock it out. So we know that working with the participant and their circle of support, I like circle of support because maybe it isn't a family member. Maybe it is somebody that you met at church 15 years ago and they've never left your side. Whoever that individual or group of individuals is, we need to call on them. In a previous slide, we talked about, not being the only agent of change. I think that's very, very important. Even as a social worker, there are things that I would not do practicing. It is outside of my scope of work. So naturally, I would call on the next professional. I think that's what we're asking you to do here. So what we talk about, working with the participant, their circle of support, it's absolutely critical to your success and their success. Person-centered planning, we know, is coming down the pike. We're going to be training the network on that. But really, person-centered planning and the person-centered thinking is effective because you have the participant engaged in their own plan of care. I cannot understate the value of having the individual engaged in their own plan of care. How do you engage a participant? Whether you're a participant in the CCP program or it's me just milling around the office, you know, Monday through Friday working with my colleagues and coworkers, you validate somebody's feelings. You validate their wishes, their concerns. How do you validate? Well, you validate through reaffirmative statements. For example, you know, I've got, you know, my feet are really painful and I'm struggling to walk, and well, oh my heavens, Mrs. Smith, I understand that, you know, you're voicing your concern. That must be really difficult for you. And, you know, if I was in your position, it would be difficult for me too. Validation establishes rapport. Once you get to that place, you don't have a trusting relationship, okay? Once you get to the place of trust, which is the most difficult thing to do. I am not trying to help you and understand your risks so that I can admit you to a long-term care facility. I'm trying to understand your risk so that we can keep you in your home. That's what you have told me your goals are on your assessment. You want to stay at home. So again, I think down that last bullet point there, they must be willing to engage in their own plan of care, which will drive the changes to their behavior and or routine. So again, you're probably not going to make this difference alone as a provider. You're probably not going to make this difference alone as a CCU, but it's absolutely critical that we're talking to the participant first. The providers and the CCUs are in communication, and we are absolutely looping in the people important to their life. By doing so, there's a theory and a concept called shared decision making, and really what it does is it leverages validation to make a decision. So I wanted to jump in on this slide. I think there's a couple more, but boy, one of the most difficult things I think we all do in our daily work is encourage a participant or any individual to change their behaviors. Continuing on the same line of thought here, motivational interviewing. This is a skill that is effective when done properly. It often requires specific training to become familiar and comfortable with this approach. I'm sure there are some of you out there going, well, I've heard a lot about this. You know, when I look online for the training resources, it's 3 days. You know, this is really comprehensive, and it is. But I think what we're going to try to do as a department is make sure that motivational interviewing is looped into the fall symposium that we are in the process of planning, okay? It's also important to realize that you can find new ways to accomplish the same goal or task, okay? Using a different path to arrive at the same place. So you know the goals the participant has. Everybody has their eyes set on a certain outcome. We have to get really flexible and be creative with how we arrive at that final outcome, okay? One way to do that, several ways to do that, there are listed on the bottom bullet. We should be coaching our participants, empower them by educating them, advocate, right? Advocate at the doctor's office. Strongly advocate for them to take some of the information to the doctor's appointment. Maybe it's a current medication list, whatever it may be. I also know, just like those of you on the line, that there are people we serve, participants we serve that don't have that neighbor. They've outlived their entire family. You know, maybe there was some family turmoil in years prior, and for whatever reason, the people, you know, their loved ones aren't stepping up. So I think it's very, very important that those of us in the aging network take pride in filling that void. Okay, so coach, empower, educate, advocate. There are a lot of hats that we wear on a given day, and I don't know that we always realize that, but really it's important for us to take pride in that and grow our skill set through these action words. The last one here that I'm going to cover, this is a big, busy slide, but I think there's a lot of good information here. Again, encouraging behavioral changes to mitigate the risk. We know that in the most severe hoarding cases, you know, your cluttered or poorly organized space increased risk, okay? You know, now that the self-neglect funding is in place through APS, those hoarding situations are coming through, right? We're doing everything we can to get early intervention services in place, but there are also some very run-of-the-mill, what I think would be logical steps you can take, considering using clear containers to help remember what is in the containers. We all like to save things that are near and dear to our heart. A clear container might help you recognize that, yes, what's in that plastic tote that's clear is of value to me, and that I do not want to recycle, donate, or give away. Okay, you can see what you're collecting, and I think it helps put it in the forefront of everybody's mind. What are we keeping? Is it a clear tote full of newspapers from 1984, or is it a clear tote full of old school memories? I think those are very different. Stackable containers to save space, as Jody mentioned earlier, especially if somebody uses a wheelchair. Boy, we need to be able to navigate our own environment, right? When crisis hits, when EMS is called, when you push your pendant and the fire truck and the ambulance arrive, I think we have all heard those stories where, the lie time was extended by 25 minutes because we couldn't even access the home. Okay, difficult cases. I understand there's a lot of what some of you may consider abnormal psychology behind this type of hoarding, but it's important to recognize. The second bullet there, emotional attachment to inanimate objects is real. Absolutely. I could go down a laundry list of things that are very, very important to me in my life, but they're not living and breathing. It's not something that we necessarily have to care for, but it's that award on the shelf. Maybe it's whatever it may be. But it's important to realize that the longer the attachment exists, the more difficult it may be to resolve. The participant you're serving is 85 years old. Okay, we're talking about a box of items that is 60 plus years old. It is very near and dear to their heart. So what I recommend and what I have seen be helpful and beneficial is, we always hear, and I think on TV, it's always displayed, that big truck backs up, here's your dumpster in the driveway, and we're going to throw your stuff away. Okay. The problem I think with that is that this individual wouldn't be keeping the trash of sorts. Okay. So if we can recycle those goods, those items are repurposed, for the common good. Maybe it helps a school. I think old newspapers, for whatever reason, kind of the current events, and saving those is a very common thing that people keep. I know that there are a lot of animal shelters, for example, that would love to have the old newspapers. Donate to organizations who find value. Another man's junk is another man's treasure. Give to family pictures. If there are things that are near and dear to your family, maybe see if somebody's interested on the other side of the family. If the family is in a position to have those discussions. Give to children or schools who might be able to use goods. Okay. If you have a stack of old books that are children's books, they haven't been open for 20 years, maybe you can work to have that discussion to give it to somebody that could really benefit from it. So I think the other thing that's extremely important, and I almost forgot to include it on this slide, is exercise patience. Okay. As soon as you become impatient, the participant you're serving will recognize that. Okay. They will shut down, they'll close up. You have lost the progress that you have made through your validation, and your reaffirmative statements. So exercise that patience, work with the participants so they can understand the reasons why you are minimizing what has been stored over time. And then I think with everything we do across the CCP program, or maybe even serving any individual, that would be considered a vulnerable population. In my own personal life, we must set realistic expectations. I never had an expectation that launching critical event reporting in ECCPIS was going to be perfect, but I knew that we weren't going to be able to get it out and get it running perfect the first go around. Okay. So my realistic expectation was to set this up in ECCPIS, work with the network like we have, and work through it to get a new system launched. So again, I didn't write myself into trouble by setting unrealistic expectations or goals that are not achievable. One of my favorite things to say, and I'm sure you've all heard it, is that we can't eat the elephant in one bite. Okay, you're probably not going to solve all this in one day.
I've never heard that.
But we take small bites over time. Okay, and again, we've taken a different path through small bites, through progress towards improvement. So I think that these last slides are very important, and I just did not want those of you on the line to think that we thought that you are tasked with something easy to do, because we understand it's difficult and we understand it's complex. So the behavioral changes are absolutely key.
Mike, I just wanted to jump in here for a minute, and we learn a lot of things in our own lives. And so there's some things that I have learned I wanted to share right now, because I am a clutterer / almost hoarder, which means I don't keep the garbage. Okay, I feel good because I don't keep the garbage, so I can't be a true hoarder, which I am. But I mean, I grew up with my father saving everything, which is from, you know, the work he did in weatherization. So we're talking pieces of houses, old sinks, toilets, all of that. And my brothers would complain about all this stuff, but every time they needed something, where did they go? Well, Dad probably has that in the backyard. So they got their resources, affirming the fact that someone could still use this, someone could still need that. So very easy to get into that. And if you share it, if it goes to somebody else who appreciates it, I mean, sometimes you kind of have to stretch that to get it out of the home, that recycling, but that works. The other thing I wanted to add was about the memories. Grief can have an effect. It's emotional, right? And so we also have those emotional connections. Time can help. Just learning from when my own parents passed away. At first, I couldn't get rid of anything. I should keep everything, right? It's a memory. It's attached to them. But 6 months, 9 months later, I was okay in letting go most of it. And it just took me time to adjust. In my own home, my husband passed away. You know, going through closet personal memories he had from childhood, some of the things that only he knew what they were or why he kept them. It takes time to be able to deal with that, to get rid of that container, to go through them. I have many. There's still some that I admit I cannot look through yet because it was just too much him. Okay, so time can often help with that maybe we look at something again. In those clear cases or writing on the outside what's inside, it's very important, because if you can't see it, sometimes they feel like they've lost it. It's also easier to go through again if you can see what's in that container. So those things, yes, keep those in mind. The grief can affect what you can and cannot get rid of. Okay, so the resources that are available, and one of the big things I wanted to make sure you knew today are some of these resources, not only for the participants, but also for you. Going to the study toolbox, you know, you go to that page and the website, and there's so many things inside of it. A lot of these brochures are directly worded towards our participants. Okay, so they can look at all these things. How can you prevent it? How can you stay independent? Those things that say, hey, let's do this so we can stay in our own home. So great brochures to go through. You learn something too, so it does not hurt. There's also things specifically for you, and they do say healthcare a lot, but they mean the person in the home, the caregivers and such. So, you know, those do apply to you. It does make a difference. Wonderful resources that we don't have to put together because they already are. Some flyers, you know, to take action, speak up, talk to your daughter, talk to you, talk to the doctor about what's going on with them, what's happening. We know they're afraid sometimes to say that they have fallen. Maybe they, you know, did you have a near fall? Maybe they'll admit that. But you have to say that to find out what happened and then see what we can fix. Problem solving in the kitchen. Again, sometimes we have too much furniture in the house. I know you've seen that. They were all family pieces. They all mean something. I like it. Sometimes repurposing things. Those dressers can go almost anywhere. Those file cabinets. A locked file cabinet is a bedstand where they can keep their important things right there next to them. Good idea. Here you see it used in the kitchen, but repurposing. And now they have that Pinterest, HGTV, whatever. They can look at things, see how it's done, see what they like. Repurposing in the living room. Those dressers can go everywhere, can't they? So again, fixing some of that older furniture. We even see it for the bathroom. It's really popular right now to take that dresser and make a cool sink out of it. Storage. Always need storage, but sometimes we just don't have it in the right area anymore. Again, too much furniture and that memory attachment. Okay, so some of those family pieces that we think are going to fall apart at any moment maybe something that they just can't bear to get rid of. So you might have to work at a different way to deal with those. Got some of those sayings that we need to keep in mind. Why are those sayings still around? Don't outwalk your walker. Okay, it also goes along with don't carry your walker, because we know that doesn't help, but we've seen it. We've seen that walker out 3 feet ahead of them, and they're stretching to get there. That's not the correct use of the assistive device either, is it? Let the walker work for you, don't carry it. Found that if they go from a walker, if they go to a cart in the store, that may help some of them, and they can't really cheat with that one. They can't throw it 3 feet forward to get to, because it's too heavy to do that. So that walking with the cart oftentimes help. Recognize that person. We've seen a few of those, haven't we? So, and there's that one where we had some statistics on about hurrying to answer the door. Those are from the records that you put in, so we know what happens. And when I tell them to slow down, sometimes you need to slow down so you don't fall. And slow down, so it's okay. Make them wait an extra minute. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's fine. Getting up from the chair too quickly can get that dizziness. Take your time. Do it right. And if they feel funny, sit down. Sit for a bit. Okay? And maybe move things around. Maybe just sit and let everything calm down. That probably includes that blood pressure. A new one, we know that what? Stop, drop, and roll when you catch on fire. Well, this is a different one. Think wiggle and roll. If you're laying down, sitting, we talked about that change in blood pressure, okay? And this happens on toilets, chairs, beds. Toilets is a big one. We had a lot of those falls in the bathroom, right? Because they were sitting too long and they were cutting off circulation in their legs. And that makes for weak legs. When they try to get up, they fall. Okay, so one of the things is don't be in a hurry. You need to think about the step you're doing. Okay, if they sit and think, they're taking their time. And then I know Dr. Kornikowski last month talked about the clenching of the hands and toes before you do anything. You know, I grew up with learning about the wiggling of the fingers and toes. Does the same thing. It's getting that blood circulating. So make that blood roll through the body. It gets that blood, going through, and you won't have that big fluctuation when they stand up and all of a sudden all the blood rushes to their feet. Okay, so each of those will help. Take your time, think about what you're going to do before you do it, and that can do a lot of prevention. Okay, so resources I use, and that you can too. I mean, they're just so much in there, so please. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There's much more out there, and a lot of things you'll see they share with each other, so they have them on their website too. So even this study toolkit, it can be found on multiple sites. I just found it the easiest to go to the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control. It was real easy to find it there. They had a lot of the resources that we used. We saw they have the tools for it. And also this Fall Prevention Center of Excellence, I do believe it goes through the Southern California University, I think is what started it. They have stop falls, and they have a lot of the home modifications, so home mods, that they're really moving forward, and hopefully something we can get more and more access to in the future. Also looking at that National Council on Aging, again, they have some of the same tools. They have a lot of the exercise methods that are out there that, I forgot that one. We know the Tai Chi, but they also have Matter of Balance is one of them. So there's a few out there to look at, see what's in the area that you never heard of. You need to go looking, see what's out there, okay? The White Crane Wellness Center, again, a lot of the same resources, but another access to go through. So at this point, I guess we're going to ask if you have any questions about what we've gone through thus far. It was kind of a general information on purpose because I don't want to go through those study forms until we have the person that really knows how to do it. So if you have any questions now, please go ahead and ask. Again, at any time, you have the contacts there for both Mike and myself. And hopefully we got past all of those with the people that couldn't see. So it's nice to see some names we recognize there. I also love the idea of sharing ideas, especially those creative ones. So if you share something with me, it's not going to be just for me. We're going to reach out and share again. I'm sure this topic, pieces of it, will be hit again throughout the year. We'll be able to go over some more specifics. So please, if you do have some ideas that you've seen, that you've used, pass them on so we can share with everybody. That's one thing we want to do, share this info throughout the state so we can all be using the same tools.
And also you can use these quality webinars that are presented as part of your in-service hours that you have to have every year. So keep that in mind as well.
All righty, and then this is Mike. Before we sign off, please keep on the lookout for information regarding a quality webinar for April. As Jody has mentioned throughout, we hope to have PT do that for us. He's very familiar with the tool, and I think we could go through, each of the 4 tests and what it looks like. I think it's important to realize that the study toolkit is targeted towards both clinicians and non-clinicians. So I think that is one of the beauties of the tool. With that, we're going to sign off today, and I hope you found the webinar to be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.